welcome to this session. This is a session on entrepreneurship development. We will be talking about human resource related issues in this episode. And the topic in particular that we will discuss here is pertaining to leadership, because leadership is a very central theme to entrepreneurship development. And that's why we are allocating this session to a discussion on leadership issues. In fact, in one of our previous episodes, if you will recall, we have already touched upon the subject of leadership. We have talked about what is leadership, how is leadership different from management practices, and what are the characteristic features or the traits of leaders, effective leaders. We in fact went on to discuss about the trait theory of leadership. And then in this episode, let's turn our attention to something which is somewhat different. Let's talk about the behavioral aspects of leadership. Now, the reason behind this different area of research into leadership started with the fact that the trait theory was unable to explain whether leaders could really be trained and groomed to accept leadership roles. If we are to believe that leaders are only born and they cannot be made or trained, then we will always have a limited supply of leaders because we'll have to wait for leaders to emerge. Okay. But then if we believe, or if we are able to prove that leaders can be trained and groomed to accept leadership roles, then we can develop leaders and we can really develop an infinite pool of leaders.
So in a way, you're trying to say that you're just polishing people who are themselves not aware probably of their qualities.
Aware or otherwise, the point is, if we see, the point is research tried to find out if leaders can really be created, or we'll have to wait for leaders to be born. Okay. Now, if research is somehow able to establish that no, leaders can be trained, then there's an obvious advantage to that, because you can then create a pool of leaders and you can have an infinite such pool,
So, but then some inherent qualities have to be there. But
fine. So that is where the behavioral theories take a departure from the trait theory. Trait theory believed that inherent qualities are required, but behavioral theories try to emphasize on what are the behavioral manifestations of successful and effective leaders, and takes the study forward from that point, okay, rather than trying to look for intrinsic qualities of leaders. That's how they are different from the trait theories.
So can we say one thing, that behavioral theories can also like define the how different leader behaviors, how they can influence the performance, or how they can affect the performance of the followers?
Of course, I mean, leaders, whether they are born or whether they are trained, depending on which theory you accept, that's going to have an impact on the followers. There's no doubt about that. But then we are really trying to take a different approach to understanding leadership, rather than looking inward, trying to find those traits which are important behind leadership roles. We are trying to find out, do leaders do something different than non-leaders, and trying to study from that angle. That's where the focus is on behavioral studies. Okay, so let's move on. And there are plenty of studies that one can refer to in terms of the behavioral issues in leadership. Some of the well-known studies are, for example, the Ohio State University carried out studies, and they came out with 2 dimensions of leadership. And these 2 dimensions they referred to as, number 1, something called initiating structure. Mind you, we are looking at how leaders behave, and they are trying to say that most effective leaders who were studied by this group of researchers found that all effective leaders, or most of them at least, tried to initiate structure in their work, in their organization, in the roles that they themselves played, and in the roles that were to be played by their subordinates or their followers. These leaders were the ones who were thinking about initiating structure, and what it means is they are trying to refer to the extent to which a leader is likely to define the roles and relationships,
and
the structure.
How they can make the employees, the subordinates.
That's right. So their orientation was towards the job and the task to be fulfilled. Okay.
that is, it is more rigid.
More rigid. Okay, they believed in more rigid structures, more well-defined roles and relationships, and how the end goal will be achieved. And they believe that the structures were responsible for making people work towards achievement of those roles. Okay,
so it gives
those goals.
Much stress on tasks.
It gives more emphasis on task, as you correctly said. That's one dimension, they said. Okay, but then there is another dimension, and that's where they said that it is something called consideration. Okay, so on the one hand, you have got something called initiating structure as a dimension. The other dimension is consideration. Now, by consideration, what we mean is we're trying to say that these people are who are worried about the relationships between employees and among employees, and also with the leader.
So it is
Okay.
related to the fellow feeling of
Is
the
more related to
between
the fellow
leaders
feeling.
and the followers.
It's about mutual trust and respect for employees' ideas, and regard for their feelings. So it's more of a
People
human orientation, more of a
Okay.
people's
Relationship
orientation. Fine. So this is the Ohio State University studies, and what they tried to say is that people who were a leader who is high on consideration could be described as one who would help employees even with their personal problems, not just official problems, who were friendly and who were very easily approachable. And the same could not be said about the people who believed in initiating structures. Okay, so that's how they discriminated between the two different groups of people. However, parallelly research was also being conducted at other places, and then we want to mention studies carried out at the Michigan State University. And out there, the researchers carried on studies independently, and what they said is they also referred to similarly two dimensions, but they labeled the two groups of people as one being production oriented and the other being employee oriented. Okay, it is somewhat similar to what the Ohio studies had confirmed. The production oriented people, as per this group of researchers,
Initiating structure.
are the ones who are who are referred to as the ones who are initiating structure by the Ohio group of researchers. And the employee oriented dimension, as you can well understand, is nothing but the consideration aspect or the consideration dimension that the Ohio studies took up. Okay, so leaders who were employee oriented were described as emphasizing interpersonal relationships, something that we have seen in the Ohio studies also. They took a personal interest in the needs of the employees and accepted individual differences among workers. They started accepting that people were not all the same. There were differences inherent between individuals. That's the way they looked at people. But the production oriented leaders accepted, they tended to emphasize the technical or the task aspect of the job. Okay, they had always tried to say that the work is more important, the employee is secondary to that. Okay, that's the approach they took. Fine, I think what we can say is the employee-oriented leaders were associated with high group productivity. The research also brought out this phenomenon that the leaders who were more employee-oriented were associated with higher group productivity, and that was an important yardstick. And it also led to higher job satisfaction among the followers or the employees. And this group said that the production-oriented leaders were more associated with low group productivity, unfortunately, and they could not lead to higher levels of job satisfaction on the part of their followers. So in a way, the studies tried to confirm that it was better if we could create leaders or have leaders who are more employee-oriented rather than task-oriented. But then, as you correctly say, that there has to be some kind of a balance. It cannot be only employee orientation and no task orientation.
So
As is
because
going to be,
I feel that
yeah.
if too much freedom is given to the followers or the other employees, then they might take the advantage of the situation.
But relationship
will-
orientation
Okay.
is not talking about freedom. It's talking about taking their personal problem into account. It's not like giving them freedom. It's about
Quite so,
talking
quite so. Just
talking
just
about
note
their
what
personal
Piyush is trying to
problems.
say, that being employee oriented will not mean that you allow them to do whatever they want. Okay, you are keeping a track of what they are doing. Only you are facilitating them to do their work, and you're developing relationships which are congenial. Fine. From this, we move on to a discussion on something called leadership grid or a managerial grid. Okay, this is also an outcome of research carried out in different parts of the world, and this was let's say a path-breaking kind of a work which tried to again show leaders or map leaders on a grid. Okay, they took up two dimensions like all the previous studies. The two dimensions here are one is the concern for
People.
production,
Concern.
and on the other axis they plotted what is called concern for people. Are you understanding? On the one hand, we have an axis on which we plot concern for production, and on the other axis we plot what is called a variable called concern for people. It's nothing but the employee orientation and the task orientation. That is exactly what we are doing here, and each of these has got 9 points going from 1 to 9. So this generates how many? 9 by 9, 81 cells on that grid. So there are 81. It's called
It's
a grid
nine,
because
9x9 matrix.
yeah, 9 by 9 matrix or a grid. That is what we have. And if you look at this grid, the cornermost cells are very important, and they tell a story. Look at that grid, or that cell rather, which is 9 by 9, which means here we are talking about a leader who is showing a very high concern for production or the task, and he's also the person who is showing a very high concern for the people who are achieving the task. Okay, so in a way you would say that's the best of both worlds, right? So this is an individual leader who is high on both, and we would say that that is the ideal style of leadership, ideal behavioral pattern of leaders, which will lead to the possibly the highest productivity because he's concerned about production, and also lead to very high levels of job satisfaction because his concern for people is also very high. But that's ideal. Now most people will hardly be able to even come close to that. And look at the other extreme points. For example, look at something like 9 by 1. The cell 9 by 1 is trying to show that here is a leader who has got a very high concern for production or the task, but
Very
the
low
lowest
concern
level
for
of
people.
concern for people. Now, how do you look upon a leader like that?
Autocratic.
He is autocratic.
Dictatorship.
Okay, he is someone who dictates, who does not listen to people, who does not appreciate the ideas of other people. He gives dictates, and his writ runs to the organization, right? So he's an autocratic individual, and what would you expect? The job satisfaction levels of workers are
Very
likely to
low.
go down,
Very
would be
low.
very low. Job morale would be very low. But then he might be able to achieve organizational goals because his orientation towards a task is very high. It's not to say that these people will not achieve productivity. They might achieve productivity, but then at the cost of having a very low employee morale. Okay, so that's one style of leadership, the autocratic style, as you can understand. Look at another individual score, which is 1 by 9. Okay, that means here is an individual leader who has got very high concern for people,
But low concern for tasks.
but very little concern for task. Something that I think one of you were referring to, like you are allowing employees to do whatever they want. They do not have a specific goal in mind. They work according to the whims. Then the task orientation is missing, so it will lead to very low levels of productivity. Okay, and that's certainly not a good way of leading people. And this is what was termed as laissez-faire. Okay. So that's another style of leadership where it's completely employee oriented, no task orientation. We had the autocratic style where complete task orientation and no employee orientation. We have talked about the ideal where it is the best of both, okay, both high. And of course, there is no point talking about the grid 1-1 where it's low on both. That's certainly not a workable style of leadership at all. So the most average leaders perhaps would settle for a 5-5 score.
Sort
Is that
of a
right?
democratic leadership.
Kind of a democratic leadership. You are giving in somewhat to the whims and fancies of the employees, but then not altogether. And you're not completely losing sight of what is the task to be achieved. So that's the kind of leadership which is there in most organizations, and that's the most predictable kind of leadership style that would be adopted by most leaders in given roles. Fine, if you have understood this, I think we have covered a fair amount of ground in terms of the behavioral issues involved in leadership. We take a break at this point of time. We come back and carry on discussing little bit more on behavioral issues and other aspects of leadership. Okay, thank you. Welcome back. Before going into the break, we had discussed about the behavioral theories of learning. We have talked about the Ohio studies. We have talked about the Michigan State University studies, and we found that both the studies kind of complemented each other. They were talking about two dimensions of leaderships. One is the task orientation, the other is the employee orientation. However, they were giving different names to it. Fine. So now, when all these things were happening, now mind you, these things were quite old, and research was being done in the 1940s to 1960s. That's the time we are referring to when these theories were created. Now, around that time, what was happening is some people in Scandinavian countries, mainly in Finland and Sweden, tried to explore whether there could be a third possible dimension to leadership, trying to break away from the Scandinavian and the Ohio group of researchers. And they felt that, well, there has to be something beyond those two dimensions, because in a changing world, it could simply not be either an employee orientation or a task orientation, but they felt that there has to be something called a development orientation. Now, a leader, they try to say, or rather effective leaders, they try to say, would perhaps be those who value experimentation, seek new ideas and promote new ideas, and generate and implement change. And that is very much aligned with the whole concept of leaders being agents of change. So this way, I think Scandinavian studies were very important because they threw a new dimension into the whole concept of leadership. So that pretty much sums up the discussion on the behavioral aspects of leadership, and this led on to a different kind of a study altogether called the contingency theories. Now, people or researchers in particular felt that neither the trait theories nor the behavioral theories of leadership could sufficiently or very convincingly explain the development of leaders. Okay, and this is what led to a different kind of research, and they said that the situational factors were very important. It's not just the individual and his traits or his behavior, but also what is the situation in which he has to perform the role of a leader. For the first time, research started throwing light on those areas.
They tried to blend both.
They tried to blend the individual within the environment and look at not only the individual but also what is going to happen to that individual given a particular environment.
So it is the combination of leadership style as well as the situation.
That's right. For the first time, situation was introduced into the discussion. Okay, it moved away from the individualistic approach to leadership and brought in the situation also. Let's look into some of the important work done here. And one of the pioneers who worked into this is someone called Fiedler. Okay, and the Fiedler contingency model happens to be a path-breaking work in this context. Fiedler model proposed that the effective group performance depends on the proper match between the style of the leader and the degree to which the situation gives control to that leader. Piyush, I think that's where we deviate from what you said. Whether the situation gives control to the leader. Okay, that's what we are trying to ascertain. And in his study, what Fiedler did is he created something called the least preferred co-worker questionnaire. Now, this is a little complicated. Let me repeat. Least preferred co-worker questionnaire. What did he propose to do? It is quite simple actually. He developed a questionnaire. Okay, this questionnaire contained sets of 16 contrasting adjectives. Contrasting adjectives like pleasant, unpleasant, efficient, inefficient, open, guarded, supportive, hostile. Now, as you can see, they are bipolar adjectives. One is the opposite of the other. And it's a kind of a scale. Each is a scale. So, similarly, he devised scales for 16 such parameters. And this questionnaire was given to, let's say, individuals working in an organization. And they were asked to find out, they would know who was the least preferred co-worker as far as they were concerned. Like if you were the respondent to this questionnaire, then you are required to think about that particular co-worker whom you prefer to work with the least. You don't like working with him at all, okay? Him or her, you don't like working with that individual at all. He's the least preferred co-worker. And how do you rate this particular individual on those 16 different parameters? Okay. That is the questionnaire going to do, and the questionnaire is going to collect that information from you and from all those people who will be part of that survey.
Sir, each parameter contains a scale.
Each parameter is a scale going from one opposite to the other. Okay, from unpleasant to pleasant, from supportive to hostile. And on each of these counts, you are going to rate the least preferred co-worker, and obviously it will come down to a score. Fine. Now, having done this scoring, let's say you are the respondent and we have taken your scores on those 16 parameters for the least preferred co-worker as far as you are concerned. Now, if the researcher finds that in spite of the fact that he is the least preferred co-worker, you have, rated him rather high. Okay. Now, this rather high has to be defined again. But then let's say for the sake of the argument that you have defined him, rated him as rather high in spite of the fact that you don't like him as a co-worker. That is telling the researcher that although your ratings are high for the least preferred co-worker, it means that you are seeking more of relationships. You're seeking more of relationships. That is why in spite of the fact that you don't prefer him as a co-worker, you still value the relationship. That is why you rate him high. Okay. So you are more of employee oriented. You are more of relationship seeking kind of an individual. So your style of leadership, now when we look at you as a possible leader, we know that you are going to be more of a employee oriented, more of a cooperation seeking kind of a leader. Okay, more of human values are associated. In contrast, if she would rate her least preferred co-worker in very low terms, okay, so there's a match. You don't prefer that worker, neither do you rate him high. That means you have got more of a task orientation rather than an orientation towards relationships. This is what the scale tries to bring out, the questionnaire tries to bring out. That means you are a different kind of a leader than him. You are more of a task oriented leader, and he's likely to be more of a employee oriented or relationship oriented leader. That is how the Fiedler model tries to ascertain the individual styles of leadership based on that kind of a study.
So, but here, where this, I have a confusion that
Yeah.
where is the situation factor coming in?
Wait, this is one aspect of the study. We are yet to come to the situational aspect. First of all, they are trying to determine the psychology or the orientation of the leader, which is pretty much similar to what has been done in the behavioral studies. Okay, that's one aspect of the study. The other aspect is to find out about the situation, and out there they try to define the situation. Let's say after an individual's basic leadership style has been assessed with the help of the least preferred questionnaire, least preferred co-worker questionnaire, they try to match the leader with the situation. And what is important then? It will have to define situations. It goes on to define key situational factors and tries to enumerate 3 different issues here. Number one, they say there has to be a leader-member relationship. What is the state of the leader-member relations? Okay, that is a situation. It means the degree to which members have confidence, trust, and respect in the leader. Now that's a situation. Okay, that's going beyond the leader. It's talking about a situation in which the subordinates or the followers have confidence, trust, and respect for the leader. And then we are saying that the leader, let's say the leader-member relations are either good or bad. They are considered to be binary, either good or bad or poor. The next dimension they introduce in situation is the task structure. The degree to which job assignments are procedurized and well spelled out, clearly defined. That is another situation. The task structure again is considered to be either high or low. Each of the situational factors have got 2 possible outcomes, high or low, good or poor, that way. And the third situational factor they talked about is something called position power. What is this position power? It's a degree of influence a leader has over power variables, like is the leader in a position to reward or penalize the subordinate for a certain outcome, for a certain event? Or let's say, can he hire and fire? Can he discipline the workers or can he not? Okay, can he be instrumental in giving them promotions or salary hikes? Now this is the power position power that is vested in the leader. That's also another situation, and this is also looked at from 2 angles. It can be either strong or weak. That means you could have a situation where the leader is vested with a lot of positional power where he can do all these things, or it could be weak where the leader is really helpless and really cannot influence the lives of the workers by either bringing in punishment or reward or promotion or salary hikes. Now, in the backdrop of these 3 situational factors, and given the orientation, which is either task oriented or employee oriented, you try to match leaders to situations. Okay, that is what the basic underlying theory of the contingency model of Fiedler is. And they try to do this. They try to find out situations in which a certain profile of leadership would do well, and under a different kind of situation, what is the kind of leadership role that would be more effective. Okay, ultimately they try to come out with the recommendation that if you do a study and find out if there is a match between the situation and the leader, and if you find there is a mismatch, you have to take action in terms of either removing the leader, replacing him with another kind of a leader who has the right style of behavior, or you have to change the situation itself in a manner that the leader is able to effectively gain control and handle the situations. Fine. With these concluding statements, I think we have covered a fair amount of ground on the behavioral aspects of leadership and the situational aspect of leadership. The Fiedler model is a path-breaking work, as I said, and you could understand the complexity of it. But then the beauty of it is this, that it could come up with a prescription as to when to change a leader or replace a leader, or change the situation in order to fit the style of leadership available with the current leader. So with this, let's wind up today's discussions on leadership. Maybe we'll come back and discuss a little more on leadership issues in a different episode. Now, have you understood the issues that we have discussed here? Okay, thank you very much.